Please welcome members of Ozomatli. We've got Ulises, Raul Pacheco, and as well as Amy Blackman, and they're going to be interviewed by Jessica Rosgaard.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for being here. This is exciting for me. I'm a big fan of Ozomatli. For those of you who don't know the band, Grammy-winning artists, they started about 15 years ago. If you haven't seen them, I highly recommend it. Their music is so exciting that I was actually putting away laundry the other day in my apartment, and I was dancing while I was doing it. They're that good. So, and if it does that in my apartment, you can imagine their shows are much better. Why don't you guys tell us a little bit, for those who don't know, about how you got started?
Okay. Hi, how's it going, everybody? Ulises Bella. This is Raul Pacheco. This is our wonderful manager, Amy, and we are part of the group Ozomatli. We've been together for 16 years, and we started in the mid-90s, obviously. We were a collection of artists and musicians from, a lot of people came from different places. Like Raul had... The day he joined Ozomatli, you had quit politics in Sacramento.
Yes.
Isn't that right?
Yes, very well.
He was fed up with that, and he wanted to become an artist. But we started in this cultural community center called the Peace and Justice Center in downtown LA. And what it was this open space that was given to the workers that had worked there. They were part of the LA Conservation Corps and ended up in a labor dispute with this organization, and formed a sit-in protest at this building, renamed the building the Peace and Justice Center, and it became almost like a community center for inner city youth, right in 4th and Bixel, right in the center of downtown LA. Now, to keep this place going, obviously it was very vibrant. People were living there. It was somewhat of a squat, but more of a art center because there was bands rehearsing there. There was a cafe there. Dancers, poets, you name it. A lot of great bands came out of that center. Every weekend they would throw parties to help this community center out, and basically guys in the circles of musicians that we knew started calling each other up and said, hey, you want to come down and just jam and help raise money for this place? Because, obviously to help maintain the water, the electricity, buy art supplies, there was need for money. And through this networking of musicians, the early gigs of Ozomatli was like 15, 20 guys all playing on stage. It was very chaotic. And every weekend we started kind of doing this. And from that springboarded into kind of realizing that we could use our music and our voice and our own physical presence to try to help various political and social causes all around the city. At that point in Los Angeles, obviously the Zapatista movement was really big. Immigrants' rights was a very big issue with us. We used to perform for HIV centers and group homes for women, and it was kind of like if your cause needed a house band, Ozomatli was it, and they'll play for free. It's cool, So we kind of dived into this, knowing that we could use our music and our band kind of, and at the same time, a lot of us, I think, felt like this isn't like a real band, even though we were all in it together. It was like, we didn't have any these crazy aspirations like at the moment. And then slowly but surely, I think we started playing the Hollywood clubs and gaining residencies in pretty established clubs in Hollywood. From these residencies, it created a super, super buzz all around the city about Ozomatli. We were getting shut down by the fire department every week because there was way too many people at the clubs. So from that buzz, we got signed to Almo Records, which was Herb Alpert and Jerry Moss's record label after they sold A&M. And we got after Almo collapsed, what was it, Interscope after that? And then how many more labels we were? We probably must have gone through 4 or 5 labels, whatever. Yeah. And from, touring the country extensively to touring Europe, to touring Asia, and then obviously in the last, I want to say 3, 4, 5 years, we've been cultural ambassadors and been able to go to, I think, a lot of different places, a lot of countries where bands don't normally go. And now, we're still definitely in the trenches as far as creatively, working, touring, exploiting every single avenue that we can use our music and our presence to make money for ourselves, obviously, because we want to live as musicians, but also retain some of that initial energy of using our music to help causes and things that we feel are very important in the world at this moment.
Obviously, you said you got started based on, social and community activism. Why do you think that kind of activism so often falls to musicians and artists to carry the torch and sort of rally communities behind a cause?
I think it varies. I think it's about individuals. I think it's much more natural if you believe in a cause regardless of what you are. And I think that it doesn't mean that a person can change or a person can learn something and get inspired and be in a life situation where you have an impact. But I think that the funny thing about that is sometimes as a musician, you're just a musician. You're not supposed to have an opinion, but you're a citizen. You really are a fabric of everyday life, just like anybody else. And I think if you want that responsibility, you can have it. And I think you can have a big impact, and you can have the ability to spread information. You can have the ability to stand up and speak about the belief on a particular side of an issue. So I think that through the years, music is obviously about a thing that binds us, and we grow up with music, we die with music. Music is always going to be there. And one of the things I've learned, one of the things I'm able to fall back on in sitting through a conference like this, which has been very informative, very great, is still for me as a musician, I just need to play music more than anything. Whatever structure is, whatever's out there, whoever's making this or that, or whatever technology is changing, I've chosen to make a path as a musician. And that's what keeps me okay with all the shifts, all the ins and outs, the ups and downs that you might go through in different ways as a musician. So I think a lot of us in the band were naturally had political opinions, and I think there are a lot of musicians out there who do, and I encourage them always to say what it is, even if it's something I don't agree with. I much prefer someone taking that chance. I think it adds to who you are, actually.
Raul's right in the sense that, especially in the beginning of this band, I think even if we weren't in this band, we would still be involved in activism. A lot of us grew up with that kind of energy around the house, and so it was kind of, for me personally, joining Ozomatli was like wonderful, because here was a collection of guys that not only super dug music from all around the world, but also wanted to use, I was always, growing up, I was a big fan of punk rock and music with message, whether it was Fela or Bob Marley or whatever. And he was a group of guys that felt the same way, that we could actually, and obviously in a collective of 9 guys, 10 guys, there's going to be a spectrum of political opinion, like some guys a little more left, a little more right, a little more whatever. But what we realize is what we do agree on is what we're going to focus on. So if everybody felt a certain issue was something close to their hearts, that's what we would focus on and concentrate on.
In the broader terms of activism, you mentioned the State Department Cultural Ambassador. I'm going to actually turn to Amy, if you don't mind. So you got that phone call, right? Can you explain to me a little bit about, or explain to everybody a little bit about how that went down, and how in such a political climate under the Bush administration that this band became cultural ambassadors?
Sure, and I think it's really apropos to a lot of the subtext of this conference. Is it actually came out of NPR, because somebody who worked in the State Department in Washington heard a story about Ozomatli on NPR, and she reached out to me because she intuited that the typical efforts of cultural diplomacy during that time were more through jazz and classical music, and that the audiences that were attending those shows overseas were getting older, and they weren't regenerating their audiences, and they wanted to find a way to reach a young audience. But with a band that also sort of represented what America is now in terms of cultural diversity, ethnic diversity, they hit the jackpot with this band. And but it was a huge risk on both sides because this was during, this was 2007. I mean, it's a crazy time to be having any sort of dialogue with this government. The first trip was to India and Nepal, and it took several months of conversations within the band for them to feel comfortable to accept the invitation. For all the obvious reasons. We took a risk. Actually, the people who programmed us overseas took a risk. But it actually worked because the work that they were doing in these communities in India and Nepal superseded any sort of political agenda. It was about human contact and human interaction. And, I think you guys can speak more to what that felt like as musicians, but as a manager, I just felt like this was a really interesting marriage, a really unique story, and I pursued it to the extent that we ended up going to, and I have these cataloged in my head, so I'll rattle them off: Egypt, Jordan, Tunisia, China, Mongolia, Argentina, Chile, Brazil, South Africa, Madagascar, Vietnam, Burma, Thailand, and Japan with the State Department. And Poland and Lithuania. Yeah. So they, it obviously worked, and they ended up sending the band all over the world because the work that they were doing was effective, and it yielded a lot more feedback than anything they had been doing in recent times. Basically since the jazz ambassadors of the 50s and 60s.
And for you guys, as far as the cultural ambassadorship, I understand that you had said that you didn't want to use this propaganda for the administration. That was maybe one of your initial concerns, or U.S. propaganda overseas. So what was your experience like, and what was maybe the most surprising thing that you took out of some of those trips?
Well, I think one of the things for me was that, kind of understanding within the State Department, especially on the culture side, that, not everyone agrees with the boss. And I'll ask each and every one of you, do you agree with all of your boss's sentiments? Do you agree with all of your coworkers' sentiments? So for me, it was enlightening to know, okay, well, these are actually a group of people who are trying to do this, world service work, and they're getting a lot of different kinds of money to get in. And then there may or may not be more politicized areas than others. What is it really that we're trying to accomplish? And I think we were able to kind of see and really it was taking a chance, because there was a lot of conversation that we had, and there was a lot of conversation we had throughout the time that we were doing that. It's, what is the experience we're going to be? And mainly we were working with a lot of things like underprivileged people that were, we're talking about orphanages, we're talking about playing a blind school in Vietnam, and we're talking about playing for different students, different music exchanges. So for us, it seemed like an extension of what we were doing already, in a sense. And it became something that we put the onus on ourselves to, can we have an experience that kind of transcends that, and can we take the chance and the opportunity to try and define a story for ourselves, rather than one that we're seeing in the news, rather than one that's being told by any types of world leaders even, but can we have opportunities to get from people to people that have an impact on us and maybe have an impact on others. And what we found were that people have a lot of stereotypes about the U.S., and we have obviously a lot of stereotypes about other people. And even someone like ourselves, who I consider open and willing to engage with strangers and willing to engage with people who have different language, different cultures, willing to engage with people who are vilified in the media and try and see them as people, it helped us to be able to recognize our own prejudices and how we need to grow. So I think the most important thing that we took out of it, and that I took out of it, was that it's still important for you to talk to another human, no matter what situation you're in. And that's the story that I think that it needs to be engaged in. That's what you need to do. Stop leaving it to someone else. And for me, it was it confirmed that. It was really helpful. And I think that's why we did it, and did it for so on and off for so many years. I think that we found that it was more important to have those moments with people, to get over the separation and get back to what we were agreeing on and find that right away. That was really encouraging.
No, I think Raul definitely expressed it I mean, for me, it even came from a spiritualist perspective, not to get all corny, but like the things that separate us sometimes as a race, as a human race, are so illusionary, you know, whether it's government, religion, these ideas, and to be in the middle of a country that I had no idea about, and if it wasn't for this band and for these opportunities to be there, but then now at this moment, be able to share music with this other person, speaking through the language of music, obviously, because I can't, you know, I don't know Arabic, you don't know English, okay, well, let's play music together, and then connecting on such a deep, deep level at that moment with that person, I walked away just completely, it was almost like ecstatic, almost like, you know, so yeah, no, it definitely refined a lot of things of the oneness of the world and how much we have in common as a people, you know. Now more than ever, I feel like an internationalist, like a citizen of the world from doing these trips.
Well, and your music has so many different influences too that I'm sure in your travels, basically everybody that you played to could hear something, you know, that was familiar to them, whether it's, you know, a certain riff or a certain rhythm or a vocal, you know, something that they could.
And for us, it's like we're rabid about music, so it's like we're in Turkey or we're in Egypt. Okay, what is hot right now? What are the kids listening to? Let's go to the CD store. Give me your music. Like, I want to, and take it home and digest it. And it was, so from these trips, obviously, our music that came after, post these tours, was always influenced by our travels, you know, whether it was jamming with kids in South Africa and them doing a gumboot dance, and you know, and us filming it, jamming with them, and then using it actually as kind of the foundation of new material, you know, or being in Madagascar. Buying instruments is a big thing with us too, even though we obviously, you know, it takes lifetimes to play any particular instrument, but just to get those sounds and those influences and bringing them back, and it really inspires as a musician, you know.
And of course, talking about NPR and you know, how that's basically how you were discovered to be cultural ambassadors. Of course, NPR, when we talk budget cuts in Washington, is always on the chopping block, is particularly now. How important is NPR, and why are those cuts such a problem for musicians?
Well, I think it's one of the things that, it's more of a business thing, actually. I think it's you know, there's a lot of musicians who wouldn't get played in anywhere else, I think, and so it's a different kind of format that really allows these different sounds and different artists to have an opportunity to be heard. And so for us, I think that's why it's vital. It's actually, it's important that it exists for someone like us because it's a good business for us, actually. And not in the sense of like we're getting a free ride, but in a sense like we're a small business and we were looking to survive. And this isn't all about jobs, Uli.
Jobs. No, but it's very true what Raul was mentioning. It's very true what Raul was talking about, because even when we were having this conversation earlier, Amy was telling us how our particular NPR station in our neck of the woods is KCRW. And with their, you know, support of a band like us, you know, when we first started, it was like, mainstream radio was like, you're singing in Spanish. We don't want you. Forget you. This was before Shakira and Ricky Martin.
Singing in Spanish and English.
And English. And yeah, and there would be a particular song that had like a Spanish verses, but the bridge is in English with a rap. And then the Spanish stations would bum out on us. Take out the English. It's gonna, you know, no one's gonna understand. So we were just caught in this like limbo of nobody wanting us. Like, Ozomatli, you're a great band, you make great music, we love you, but we can't play you, you know, oh well. So who actually would stick out their necks and play Ozomatli and support Ozomatli was NPRs, you know, and public radio stations all around the country, you know.
And all the varied ones. I mean, there's, you know, KPFK in LA, there's
Pacifica stuff, you know.
So you know, I think any of those opportunities, I heard a lot that spoken a lot about this conference, about the kind of the community of musicians, the different types of support. That's definitely one that is still utilized. I think it's important that it's still there for a varied amount of reasons. And one of them, as a musician, is that it gives me an opportunity to create an audience, and I think that's why it's important.
Well, and it's interesting to me too, just talking about Ozomatli and the English versus the Spanish, and this radio station won't play you and that won't unless you take out whatever. I had read somebody was trying to file your CDs at home and didn't know where to put you. And it seems that commercial radio and the music industry in general really wants something that's definable and that you can fit in a box, but it's art. So how do you try and put that sort of the title and structure and limitation on art?
One of the things that I encourage artists to do is to be yourself. Unless you're really trying to just play some game and make it into something, and if that's yourself, that's cool. But I think this was very natural for us. It's one of the reasons why we're still together. It's because we're playing music that we feel comfortable with. And even our process of making music is a compromise. At the moment, there's 7 members that always are there no matter what. And it's a conversation about the music that we create, about where we go, about how we go, about what jobs we decide to take, whether as composers for video game music, whether that's writing a song for and movie soundtrack, whether it's about a new group of recordings that are under just us and our name. And all those things matter to us. So I'm sorry. Oh, I thought that was someone. It was the cameraman speaking. I totally threw it off. Yeah, I lost where I was. What was it?
Well, one of the things I wanted to add to that, sitting at the table with Bertus Downs, and I just exalt Bertus Downs. And I love that he started the conversation by saying, I've had one job in my adult life, and that's to be REM's manager. It's what I think when I've managed Ozomatli for 15 years. They've been around for 16 years. I think when you get anywhere over 10 years, you get to speak in terms of having longevity. That now that they've been around, they've become their own paradigm. And they actually are a reference point musically for other music, right? And that's the biggest gift and the biggest edification I think that a band and a manager could get is, when somebody is looking to license a song for their movie and the ask that goes out on email is, I'm looking for something Ozomatli-ish for this party scene. It's wow, they actually created their own genre. So back in the good old days of retail, right? 3 years ago? Where it was, do you rack it in Latin? Do you rack it in alternative? Do you rack it in dance? Do you rack it in world? Do you rack it in hip hop? We had those battles and battles and battles. And I'm really glad that we don't have to think about that anymore because, they can go anywhere, and that's a blessing and a curse. But it's also that, with that enduring career arc that really is a gift at this time, what they've done is carve out their own niche that now I hope that other bands can land in.
And not only musically, but I think that even from the beginning we had this ethos of okay, we love everything. We're mixing cumbias with reggae, we're doing merengue, we're doing hip hop with Charlie Tuna and Cut Chemist, Okay, who do we play with? What scene are we in? It's what are we, And I think early on we're just gonna open and play for whoever wants us. And it was very, obviously, I think it helped us acquire this amazing, eclectic, grassroots audience that has followed us now, that are completely rabid about Ozomatli. In the early days, I remember it's the Reggae Fest, UCLA Reggae Fest, boom, let's go play it. Some salsa legend, whoever, Willie Colon wants an opening band. Oh yeah, let's do it. Michael Rose. I remember one time when Ozo opened up for Wu-Tang in Wu-Tang Clan at Long Beach, and just weird gigs in all these places. One of our first major tours was the Warped Tour, which everyone obviously knows is more kind of skate punk, kind of alternative scene. So
we were the most alternative thing.
We were the most.
Everyone else looked the same. And
everyone did
like,
look.
wow.
And Mike Watt blessed us. He said, "You guys are the most punkest here." But I think from that kind of angle of not letting the style and the scene and all this other stuff affect us, obviously it's detrimental sometimes too, but we've been able to acquire an amazing, multi-generational, multicultural audience that I don't think a lot of bands don't have.
So now that I know the question, what I was talking about, yeah, I think that is something I would encourage artists to do, is to be yourselves naturally. I think we have been that, which is this, it's being respectful of everyone's opinion in our band, and everyone comes with different kinds of tastes and different kinds of ideas, and doing the real like brother work, you know, like kind of family work that it takes to agree on, okay, this is the kind of songs we're going to make. And I think that has helped us stay together. It's helped us enjoy, you know, the ups and downs of you know, the changes in the music business. And I think at the same time, it's, you know, I see a lot of artists who say, oh, well, the label doesn't do this and they don't do that. And, you know, that's all true. And I'm one for, like, let's not wait around for that. You know, let's just do what we're going to do and see how we can make it happen. We used to show up at a event and beg to play. And there would be like, there's 4 bands, we don't need anyone. Well, how about if we plug in the wall socket across from the stage when the bands are changing over? There was some, we just wouldn't take no for an answer. And I think,
and there was enough of us to push that issue too.
So I think, you know, it's just an example of, like, don't let those perceived walls, if you really want something, don't let them hold you back. You know, and I really encourage musicians and the young musicians that we work with to go for it in any way possible.
The perceived walls, or that sort of perception, is kind of interesting to me because, you know, you mentioned playing the Warped Festival. I'm a big fan of Jazz Fest in New Orleans, and I know a lot of Jazz Fest traditional people would prefer that certain national acts not play because they're not jazz, they're not New Orleans heritage. Jazz Fest was the first time I saw you guys, and to me, I don't care why people are going. You know, if you have an opportunity to see something new, I don't care if they came to see Bon Jovi, you know? So how much has that sort of influence helped you guys on the grassroots level to build your fan base?
I think, you know, we still have a career because we are, I'm proud to say, you know, a really good live band. We give a lot of energy.
And their shows are much better. Why don't you guys tell us a little bit, for those who don't know, about how you got started?
Okay. Hi, how's it going, everybody? Ulises Bella. This is Raul Pacheco. This is our wonderful manager, Amy.
If you have never been there, you should go any opportunity you get. The first time we went, we were on a flight. We had never been there. We didn't really know anything about it. We found out we were going on 3 a.m. and we were like, 3 a.m., who's going to be there? And we go, you know, we're on the plane, and some people are going to Jazz Fest, and they're like, what time are you guys playing? 3 a.m. They're like, wow, you must be really good. You know, we're going on at 3 a.m. So I think a place like that, you know, is such rich in history. We had such an incredible time. They're meeting musicians, having lifelong friends now, people who live there or people who just were rolling through for that festival. And it's one of the important musical, cultural, I mean, it's super important for a world, you know, music style that influences so many different things and has spawned so many different things and is a vital place. So being tapped into that and that level at a festival, we're going to play at the Voodoo Festival there, you know, the beginning of November. And going, you meeting people and seeing that music and its influence all over the world is an important thing. We made a song on one of our records that was totally about Katrina, the mishandling of it, and it was done in that style. And, you know, we would play it with honor there at that city every time we go there.
Oh yeah, I mean, for me particularly, the connection of what New Orleans means as a cultural center of the country is enormous. You know. We had another saxophone player who recently passed away, but the first time we went to New Orleans, we geeked out. We were like going to the Jazz Museum. No one was in there, of course, but we were. We were looking at Bix Beiderbecke's cornet, going to Congo Square. Like, the history and the connection of what the music that came out of that city, it influenced some barrio kids in Los Angeles, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
And I think the energy and what I guess is the engine of what Ozomatli is, I think people from New Orleans see that and they can reflect, they you know, oh yeah, you guys, oh yeah, a bunch of different race of guys, oh yeah, you guys are making music to dance to, oh yeah. They can relate to it instantly. So that was the cool thing about New Orleans for us, is that there was this instant connection, instant relatability, and we just dived into it. We loved it.
I think we're going to take some questions from the audience.
A quick update from the road. We've been in constant text communication with Congressman Gerholm and his staff. What I would like I would like to report that we have fought the traffic and the traffic will have won. So we're going to, let's go to some audience questions.
Let's just dance.
Let's just dance.
So we're sorry about that, but anyway, thank you very much.
Yeah.
First trip I've done without no instrument.
It was really weird. So we taking questions, is that what you said? Anybody have a question? There's a question up there. That guy's getting his exercise in all 3 days. Yeah, I've seen it.
He's the step master.
I had the pleasure of seeing you speak and perform a bit at South by Southwest earlier this year. And I thought there was an interesting story I was wondering if you could retell for folks here, which is how you win over audiences in countries that you go to. Like, you talked about a really interesting way that you try and forge alliances between yourselves and new communities. I thought maybe other folks would like to hear it.
Was this at the TED Talk thing that we kind of displayed?
one
We
that you
did
did-
it in the conference room?
At South by Southwest in the conference center?
Yeah.
I mean, if I'll sort of tip you off a bit, like just how you talked about how you learn a little bit and then you play it.
Yeah.
forward.
Oh, well, I think we're naturally very curious about places we're going that we've never been, and it could, in the States, in anywhere. And we all kind of do it in different ways. Our bass player, Will Dog, like he learns if it's a different language, he'll learn like phrases in it, to kind of engage people on stage. I think we're all into food. We'll always be like, where do you guys go eat? Let's go there. Music, like Ulises mentioned, and he's one of the ones who really goes out of his way to check out instruments. And
Because there's nothing that bums me out more than being 1,000 miles away from home, and a guy's gonna eat McDonald's or KFC.
don't do that.
It's like, dude, try something new, man.
You're nuts. Don't eat it. And I think for me, like I tend to read, like I try to find someone who works and read like a history that's about that region, or I try to have some kind of paradigm for me that is like, okay, at least I have some reference, cultural and historical references about where we're going and what this is about. So I think we all are naturally open and kind of engaged in learning, and because we're musicians and we love music, we're naturally gravitated toward that. So we go out of our way to like engage with local musicians. We go out of our way to listen and find music, but I think we go out of our way to engage with people in other settings too. It's not just about music, it's about going out. It's about, oftentimes if we're on a place that is, where, a lot of times people will be very kind and they'll have structure for you. They'll be like, oh, well, we know you're from this part of, the world and we want to show you all these things. But we kind of examine, are these people like the people in the streets, or are these people like the people from, the conference center or whatever? And we're always like, we definitely make efforts to let's get out of what's even programmed for us, because I think we want to have engagement with people that's just, hey, who are you on the street? More kind of like out of a way that's more natural. And it's really interesting when we're walking down the street in Burma, and there's like, you have maybe like locals who are like, who is this? And then you have like Burmese government people walking you on one side trying to keep track of you, and you're doing your best to get away from all that and go to a party of local people. So it takes effort, it takes like just openness, and I think it's something that we love to do. So it's not hard for us. It's like something we go out of our way to engage ourselves in.
I want to add to that, Kristen, because I think I know what you were getting at. And one of the great things, as a manager, I don't know if there are any managers in here right now, but I'm sure there are managers watching, is, by the time the band is plugged in and on stage, like, we get to watch the show, and I get to be a fan. And one time someone in the band was like, "Why are we standing there watching us when we're playing?" I'm like, "Because I need to remember why I like you, so I put up with all this crap." And so I make sure that I go and watch the show. And we've been in these situations overseas where some of the audiences were unsure could have been hostile, but there were tremendous cultural divides. For example, in both Nepal and Mongolia, they were the first Western band ever to give a free public concert, ever, and we verified this. So people didn't know what to expect. The band didn't know what to expect. So, they have a couple of strategies that they do, and I love this as a spectator. One of them is they will learn like a few phrases of a kid's nursery rhyme or some really popular song that everybody knows, like the example, I guess it would be like the Hokey Pokey or something, and they'll play it and people will just go berserk. The other thing that they do is learn to say things in the local language, like, "How you feeling? Let's dance." We're Ozomatli from Los Angeles, and people appreciate that so much that they've gone out of their way to learn, even if it's butchered. Like, people get really geeked about it, and then they start to open up. Now, in Mongolia, where they had a huge crowd, it was totally unprecedented for them to be doing this. They didn't know how it was going to go over. They took it a step further and actually opened the show with a throat singer, and just jammed with him, and then gradually introduced themselves. And that was just spectacular, because I think I've never seen an audience sort of warm and open up. It was visceral. And that takes a lot of courage, and it does inspire me to fight this fight every day, to help find a way to make a living for this band and with this band. When I see moments like that really just transcend all borders.
Other
That was
questions?
very nice, Amy.
Oh.
I like you.
I didn't see you guys perform live until the Kennedy Center show with the NSO.
Oh yeah, that was real different. But
That
that
was real
fun,
different,
yeah.
and I can tell that you guys really enjoyed it in a live context. Is that something that you guys try to do to spur your creative process, or is that just something that you just think it's a good, cool
I think it was
opportunity?
when someone said, "Hey, do you want to play with an orchestra and have your music arranged with an orchestra?" I mean, you're going to be like, I don't know a musician that'd be like, nah, it's cool, man. Nah, F that, It was a pleasure. And I mean, coming from most of us in this band, I want to say all of us, came from public school system, music programs. And so a lot of us went through different orchestras. Raul was in a real famous boys choir. So we've kind of touched into that world too and know how serious and what it takes to be in an orchestra. So just to get thrown into that mix is a huge treat. The first one we ever did was Boston Pops, and then we did NSO, we did a San Diego one. So for us, it's just an immense treat, if anything. It's not, I don't know if it particularly spurs anything else, but to hear 150 dudes and men and women just behind you playing, it's just like the biggest amp in the world. It's just like amazing.
I think there are a lot of different things on different levels. It's like one of the things that I think applies in this conference is all those different revenue streams that people talk about. I think for us, we're very open, to having new experiences that I think naturally. So that allows us to kind of, an orchestra approaches you. As musicians, we're totally excited. So it's like, plus it's like, what? It's a gig. It's a great gig. It's something new. It's like, wow, okay, after 16 years, we gotta be finding new things. We see each other a lot. And it's like, wow, okay, these new experiences really help our whole story and our personal life experience. So, and I think as musicians, we're super respectful of what it takes to be a classical musician. I mean, we look at them and we're like, whoa, the type of detail and type of attention and type of effort it takes to play at that level is immense. It's it's a super commitment. And it moves us. So when we meet people on that level, and it's funny, it's a challenge for them to kind of like, okay, because we're obviously really different. We're giving them high fives. We're being ourselves. I think it makes it fun for everybody. I think that's what the audience gets to see. But from a musician standpoint, it's really inspiring. It's beautiful to have a song played like that and behind me, and to be able to sing with that behind me. It's an experience I would not have ever had. So I'm grateful for that. And like I said, we are really respectful and honor like what those musicians, the level of that musicianship. It turns us on a lot.
Okay, I think I'm being told that it's time to wrap up. The irony just occurred to me that the congressman got stuck in traffic and gridlock in Washington. Go figure, just like everything else in Washington. Anyway, we're sorry he couldn't join us.
Nice excuse, huh? He's at the bar.
I didn't say that, and I don't endorse that.
We're joking.
We're just joking. Don't take that seriously, Congress.
We'll see you there.
We'll see you in Georgetown.
But thank you all for joining us. Thank you guys for joining us and taking the time out.
Thanks everyone for hanging out. Thank you so much.